In the last part of our seminar today, let's go back and answer our question. That is the Electoral College a function of the popular vote? We can take a look at here some past elections. In 2016, President Trump won 40% of the popular vote, and he won 304 electoral college votes, so he ended up winning the election. A few years earlier, notice that McCain also won 46% of the popular vote, but he only won 273 electoral votes, so he lost the election. So what happens is, notice they both had the same number or the same percent of the popular vote, but they had totally different electoral votes, so the answer is no. It's not a function, because of the states they win in how many electoral votes each of those states has. Now we take a look at, here's a blaring example. We're going to look at just 3 states: California, Ohio, and Texas. Notice in scenario 1, California has 10 million Republicans and 14 million Democrats. So if they just voted along party lines, which we know they don't, people don't do that all the time, but let's just say they do for this example. So California is going to go to the Democrats because they'll have 55 electoral votes. Well, Texas has 10 million Republicans and 7 million Democrats, so Texas is going to go Republican. And then we'll look at Ohio. Ohio has 3 million Republican and 4 million Democrats, so what happens is Ohio is going to go to the Democrats. Now, if we take a look here, let's take a look at the Republican. How many votes did they get? What percentage did they have? Well, we have 10 plus 10, so we have 23 million Republican votes out of, let's count them up here, there's 24 million in, let me see here, got to pull up my calculator. So we have 24 million in California, and we have 17 million in Texas. Whoops, can't type here. And we have another 7 million in Ohio. So we have a total of 48 million votes. So 23 divided by 48, that's going to be about 48%. Okay. Now, the Democrats then, if we look at those, we have 14, 21, 25 out of 48. So 25 divided by 48, whoops, clear, using my calculator here, is going to give us about 52% of the popular vote. However, when we look at the Electoral College, the Republicans is going to have 38 out of, we have 55 plus 18 plus 38. 55 plus 18 plus 38. So they would win 38 out of 111 electoral votes. Okay, which would be, if we take 38 divided by 111, we would get 34% of the Electoral College. So notice that they're going to have less representative than they are of the total votes. Whereas the Democrats is going to have 55 plus 18, or 73 out of the 111 electoral votes. So if we take 73 divided by 111, well, actually, you should be able to figure that out. Just take 100 minus 34. And that would be, what, 66%. So they are overrepresentative in the Electoral College. Now, let's just do a little switching around here. We're not going to change the total number of votes. There's still going to be 23 million Republicans. There's still going to be 25 million Democrats. The only difference is, notice what happens. We're going to have 1 million Republicans from Texas move to Ohio, and 1 million Democrats from Ohio move to Texas. So what happens here? Well, we still have our popular vote is still going to be the same. The Republicans are going to be 48% of the popular vote. Oop, lost my pen there. Okay. And the Democrats are going to be 52% of the popular vote. But now, because of that switch, notice what happens. Ohio is going to switch from Democrat to Republican. And so what happens is they take all 18 of their votes and they're going to go with Texas in the Republican column. So now if we look at the Electoral College, which I'll abbreviate EC, so the Republicans are going to have 38 plus 18. Or 56 electoral votes, okay? Which would be, if we just had this country with these three states, that would end up being the winning percentage. 56 divided by 111. So although they have less than a majority of the popular vote, they have about 50%, 50.4% of the Electoral College. And then the Democrats, they're going to be only have 55 out of the 111, which means they have 55 divided by 111. Let me see if I can do that for you. Oops. So they have 49.5% of the Electoral College. So in other words, they would lose. Notice, in both cases, the Electoral College does not exaggerate the percentage of each, the winner and the loser. So the idea of the Electoral College is, for a presidential candidate, is not that you have to win the popular vote. Not that you have to go and spend money in states you're not going to win. But the key is to pick the few states, the purple states, and make sure you win those in your columns, because you win a lot of electoral votes. So for Ohio is a key one. Way back when, in the last century, when the first president, or when George W. Bush ran against Gore, it all came down to Florida. The other rest of the country was Republican and Democrat switched, but whoever won Florida won the entire election. And that's where we look at for the function. So on your assignment, we're going to have you do some thinking about this and some justification and extrapolation based on what we have with functions, and look at that. And you can decide whether you think this is a good system or not.